Okay, so taking over the food illustration to the next level. So what I normally do with food illustration through the month is to go over different aspects of food illustration. And what I've found broadly are just these three or four categories that usually suffice. So it's like a huge category, but at least you know that is what you have to practice doing. So you start off with something like just the raw ingredients. Like in the first session, we just did the fruit and vegetable thing. But there are tons of fruit and vegetables. And apart from fruit and vegetables, there are a lot of raw ingredients, which includes spices, herbs, even things like grain and salt, sugar, all of that. The ingredients there are just go into your pantry and you'll see that everything has a different kind of structure. So it's not enough often to just stick to the produce, you go into other areas as well. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time this time to go over all of that, but I will give you an idea of how you can illustrate those elements also through just indicative from the recipe that we're going to do today. Then the second part is to show them as cooked, prepared items, which is again depending upon what cuisine you're cooking, everything looks different when it's prepared. Some cuisine looks interesting after it's cooked, some looks better before it is cooked, and it's your choice for how you want to illustrate it. When it comes to an illustrated cookbook, you are the one who decides how it has to look in the end. When it comes to photography, very often you would want to see the final product at the end of the day. And that's easy to do with photography. You just make it a very nice presentation and you are able to, I mean, there are lots of options to be able to do that. But art tricks are different. Photography has different tricks to make their pictures look attractive. So, keeping that in mind, we also look at the different things that you need to know how to draw to make the presentation look good, which includes dishes or kettles or sometimes even appliances. Say, for example, you are making a chutney or something, you might want to use a mortar and pestle or something like that. So, that itself also becomes part of your illustration. It can be fun to bring in all these things. Different processes will have different tools, so those tools become an interesting addition to the illustration. So we have the raw ingredients, then we have the cooked final version of the food that you're cooking. Allied to that are the presentation utensils and also for the preparation, what tools you need. And finally, when we have to put all of this together, we have to think about composition. And this element of food illustration is more, I guess, from the graphic design point of view, where you have to contend with the possibility of a certain amount of text or readability in an illustration. It may not always be text. You may have a whole text block, or you may not have any text at all. But you have to know that you are trying to communicate something. It is no longer just a pretty picture of a beetroot that you're going to put up. There's something that you are conveying, and hopefully, the way you say it, it'll be easy for somebody to just look at that and recreate that in real life. So that element of communication requires communication design thought, and that's what I want to share with you today. So when it comes to graphic design, there are several rules that you have, and I'm going to go over some of the important rules as far as illustration is concerned. We still have to keep the illustration um, like an illustration, like a painting. It has to be a reflection of your personality, but still, we need to also keep it. keep it close to the rules so that it doesn't look too, I mean, yeah, there's no point. It's actually, you can do any wild stuff, but if you know the rules and then you make your illustration wild, it's different from just winging it and everything just becomes wild and you say, so what, I'm an artist. So I prefer to do the first part, like think about it, understand it, and then just go ahead and do whatever you want anyway. So what we're going to do is, on the back of the page that we are going to make the illustration, I just want to give you a few notes. And we are going to make a couple of rough illustrations for the layout that we want to design. And then once we are sure of that, then we will make the illustration in the front. So the very first thing to do when writing or making any kind of illustration, especially with recipe illustration, is to write down the recipe. You don't just pick out a book and you start illustrating, because you need to know how much content you have and how you are going to put all of that in on your page. So we are going to write down Siley's lovely recipe. And you can use this opportunity to practice some lettering styles. I usually leave the title blank. I won't write the title in the beginning. But you can practice something like this. Instead of writing in your regular handwriting, you can just write all the ingredients in simplified capital letters and see what kind of font you want to go with it. Or you can write the same thing in print, but make it slightly different. You get a chance to also see how long your words are going to be. So how you would like to lay those letters out. Like for example, if I write baking soda beyond this point, the 2 is, or whatever, 1 teaspoon is going to go pretty far off. So maybe I can write baking soda here. And just test out whether this also works for the illustration. You could try making the letters italic. And also abbreviations. Would you write GMS or would you just write a G, and does that convey the idea clearly? Then no need to write extra stuff. You could practice writing in cursive. The issue with cursive is it is believed that not many people now read cursive or will understand cursive. I have written cursive all my life, and I have written cursive and made the younger generation also read it, because I've tried to test this theory out. It's just the assumption is more prevalent than the fact. And 100% of people are able to figure out what I have tried to write, given time. Of course, the older generation knows this because they have at least got some exposure to cursive writing. But the younger generation comes and says, "Oh, this is cursive. I don't know how to read because we are not taught it." And then you say, "No, just give it a shot. It is English. This is a word you know. Give it a shot." And then you say, "Oh, I don't know this." Usually the capitals are what will throw them off, but then they know the rest. And then you say, "Okay, what could end with UTTER?" And they will say, "Okay, is it butter?" And that's it. That's all you need to do. And I believe that if I'm making an illustration and the illustration is good enough, the people who really want to will make the effort to try to read it. This is not an exit sign on a highway where you quickly need to know where to turn to Karad, otherwise, you're going to reach Kolhapur. It's not like that. So, you can give it some time and people will figure it out. Plus, you're making illustrations. So, those who cannot read also can see the illustrations and know what you're trying to say. All right, now as we have written this, the right, very studious, nerdy way to go about it is also to make pictures of this. Make sample pictures of all these, pretty much like this, so you know how your elements are looking. So let's say, if we were to make eggs, can you draw an egg? Does this look like an egg or does this look too up, too slender? Then maybe I can make another egg. Okay, these two eggs look good. How about bananas? So since there are two bananas, I want to draw two bananas. And I'm visualizing them as two bananas like that. They are curved, but they're radiating. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a pair of parallel lines first. This is the body of the banana. Then the banana in the foreground, which is the one that's slightly lower here, I'm going to complete that with a compound curve like this. And from the other side, the same. Now the one in the background is going to join the first one. So I'm going to overlap the foreground line and make the shape of the bananas like this. And the bottom part is just rounded, but it's not rounded at the same point. If I taper this to the same point, it's going to look more like a blade or a sword than a banana. So one side the curve is slightly smaller and shallower. The other side the curve is slightly longer and rounder. This would give us a better looking banana. Okay, so we got eggs, we got bananas, baking soda. Now baking soda is just a powder, but the trick to show any object like baking soda, flour, salt, cocoa powder, any of that is to draw a container. So start off with an oval shape like that and make a cylinder out of this by making two vertical lines on the side and making a parallel line to the downward bending curve. Then give this bottle a short neck like this. Make two parallel lines a little distance away from that neck. And now join the parallel line to the neck. Whenever you are making jars or bottles like that, make the body of the bottle separately, the neck separately, and the lid separately. If you try to make this shape come down like in one stroke, there are chances that one side you will get a little rounder, the other side will become slightly sharper. You won't be happy with it. And then when you're making the base needs to at least be parallel to the same bottom circle. But at what point? You can decide that by first making a line and then curving the edge towards the top and also rounding it at the corners over here. That's just how cylinders work. And then we are actually going to put a very quaint little label. I do a lot of vintage labeling in my illustrations because I think about 50 years ago they were making cuter labels than they're making right now. Right now they're just so functional, they're very boring. So, do I want boring illustrations or labels in my illustration? Maybe not. So, what I can do is make my own label over here. And in this, I will actually write baking soda. Sorry, is it baking soda or baking powder? It's baking soda, is it? Okay. And if you want, you can make like a little cupcake logo. So these are like little Easter eggs I put in my illustration once in a while. There will be a very proper logo designed of a completely fictitious company whose name is not written. Alright, now walnuts. So walnuts are the cutest little nut that you can make. So you start off with making a base like this, very lightly, and a dome on top. This is going to be the cross section like of our walnut, or silhouette, not cross section. And then from any one side you can also add a bump like that. So you get these two bumps for the walnut. And then in all of this, you only make these wobbly lines that are compound curves that go into each other. You don't need too many also. And you can repeat the same thing by changing the angle of that curve. So you can make a curve like this and make that second bump a little more visible, because now you've changed the angle that you're seeing the walnut at. And first make that division between the two hemispheres. And just add compound curves and curves nestling into each other like this. Alright, now sugar, butter and flour. Again, you can make a nice sugar bowl. Start off with an open half oval. Make the neck of that bowl and sorry, this was the rim. Then make the neck, and you can make a nice stubby little pretty looking jar from which you can throw out two lines which are not really parallel. This can be a little spoon, and then you can complete the oval on the other side. Drawing sugar and salt and flour is rather difficult. You don't want to do that because it's just white crystals or white powder, and it takes such a long time. You don't, instead of that, you could just have something like this onto which you can write. So imagine some of the best cups and bowls that you would want in your kitchen. Just draw them. This is my that the whole Millen Soman phenomenon. I could not have Milan Soman in my fashion show, so I just drew a picture on the illustration of our um, garments. You can have whatever you want in your imagination and make it happen. All right, so that's sugar, and you can put nice flowers or something in it, whatever you want. And the same thing, bowl can also become honey if you want it. Just change the writing on that depending upon your recipe. For flour, we can make a sack of flour. So here's how you make a sack of flour. You can make 4 lines which are curved outward like this. Okay, so they're curved outward like that, but this will look like a very fake sack. So what you do is pull out ears from the side and also overlap some of the fabric so that it looks like towards the bottom the flower is settling, almost like a pot-bellied sack. And again on top of this you can write flour or maida or whatever you want to write. So when you are writing these letters, don't do too much decoration on the ingredients over here. It's not really advisable. And for butter, you can make a butter dish, or you can just make I guess a chunk of butter, which would be like that. So start off with a V shape, or make a parallelogram with vertical lines and round off those corners. And on one side also make a triangle like this, so it looks like part of this butter has been lifted. And you can make a nice butter knife like that, which is basically just 2 curves joined this way, and put a little dollop of butter on top. Now, if you do not want the butter to look like it is just irresponsibly kept on the counter, you can draw a small oval around it with this butter knife precariously perched. And if it's not looking very naturally perched also, it's okay. Just let it be the way it is. This is after all an illustration, and illustrations are allowed to defy all logic and all physics. Okay, now this is one sample, and you could be happy with this, or if you want, you can make some other illustrations before you make your final illustration. Now let's come down to the composition. So when we're making the composition, we have to keep a few things in mind. First one is, who is the hero of your illustration? You may have one or many that are going to be the hero, and the hero needs to stand out. This guy is going to sell your picture. You would always give a very prominent place to the hero in a poster. That's the one that you're going to give in your illustration. So is this going to be the ingredients, or is this going to be the finished dish? You can choose either. So sometimes if the if you're going to make like a beetroot raita or something, that raita is just going to look like a little pink puddle. But the beetroot is such a beautiful vegetable to paint. So make the beetroot the hero. The beetroot, onion, chilies, all those raw colors will look so beautiful. Give them prominence. And then somewhere in the corner, just because you can make a little nice bowl with some lovely blue or orange design in which you can show that prepared pink puddle. So once you have decided, or once you're considering the hero, the remaining will all become the subordinates, and they will be supporting illustrations. And although these illustrations are not going to be prominent enough, they should support the hero. They cannot distract, and they cannot be too weak either. Otherwise, they're not needed there. So they must be strong enough and supporting of the hero. Sorry. Then the third element we have is text. And text is now subjective. We definitely need the title, but do you need the body text? So in today's recipe, the body text is absolutely minimal. Blend all this together, preheat the oven to 180 degrees, and cook for 45 to 50 minutes. That's it. There are 3 pieces of instruction. So you don't really need so much body text. And it would be very clever if we could do away with this, just write this, and somehow indicate, or with the least amount of text, what we have to do. Obviously, the first, we don't even have to say. We are not going to do anything other than mixing these ingredients together. So that's done. So all we need to show is an oven and a timer. Now here's where we can decide to illustrate that as well. So that becomes an additional illustration. Let's make a quaint little oven. All it needs to show us is the degree, the temperature. So I'm showing a small OTG, in fact, nothing fancy, but you can make it fancy also. And now here is a creative decision. Imagine now trying to show the temperature in this tiny space, like, oh my god, this is going to be 0, 100, whatever, so 180 will be over here. That's not how we illustrate. You can write 180 very prominently on top of the oven itself. So there's no confusion here. 180 degrees. It could be here, it could be here, wherever. We are not going to rly on the knobs to show our temperature. And you do not have to show your batter inside the oven either. Those are the few things that we think very directly and want to put in the illustration. No, it's just indicative. Get rid of anything that is not necessary. And then we can put a timer. So you can put like a proper egg timer, or you can just make a nice old-timey watch and put the time. 45 minutes. You can also make it like this. There are lots of ways of showing time. And this one again reduces the need to show numbers. Okay, so now we have everything illustrated, everything decided. We've also tested out some fonts. Excellent. Right, now we are going to try out some compositions. So when people who write start drawing, there's one critical change that we forget to make, and that is the fact that while text has a particular order, pictures don't need to have too much of order. In text, you will write from left to right, top to bottom. There is a chronology that you need to follow, otherwise, you won't be able to make any sense. But with pictures, it's not really that important. In fact, sometimes it is annoying that if you want to show something closer to you, you have to start from the bottom. If you want to show overlapping, you don't start from the top. We always start from the top and then we say, okay, now how can I overlap on top of something that I've already drawn? So, for all practical purposes, the start of a picture is the bottom of the page and then you build up to the back. So when you're thinking in illustration also, don't think of linear placement. We are not thinking of putting eggs, bananas, baking soda, this, that, the other in one line. It does not have to be in a line. As long as it's all there, it shouldn't matter. Finally, it will make sense. So, how do we think of the composition of the picture? We just bring it down to making small thumbnail sketches and trying out different layouts. So make 3 boxes in the kind of proportion we are talking about. So for the student's book, the dimensions are usually 8 inches by 9.5 inches. That is the illustration size that I will request when you want to participate in the book. So 8.5 by 9.5 is not an A4 size. You will have to reduce some of the length. And sorry, not 8.5. 8 is the width, 9.5 is the length. So your your illustration will also have to be length longer than horizontal. All right. Now, what are the ingredients? And one thing that we haven't drawn is the final cake. So we also have to write that down because we need to decide who the hero is of our illustration. So what's a simple thing to do? How about we will make all the ingredients in a circle? So you have eggs, bananas, walnuts, then you have butter, flour, sugar, baking soda, and maybe we can put the cake in the middle. Somewhere over here we also have to show the oven. So we can maybe shift all of these over here and make some nice drawing like that. Convert this to the oven, this to the timer, so that within a circle everything is given. And maybe we can write the title over here. So this is our banana walnut cake. We can write banana walnut cake. Now, how do you think about different compositions? Once you have made one composition, it becomes very difficult to think of more options. So the strategy is don't repeat anything that you have done over here. Do something completely different. And in order to do that, you describe to yourself what have you done here. Here there's a certain size. The illustrations are small all around the final picture and in a circle, and the title is at the bottom. So if you were to do the opposite of this, let's make the title at the top. And instead of showing all these ingredients small, what if we show the ingredients pretty large? So you could have maybe uh, the cake like this in the foreground instead of in the center, and in the background you have all these ingredients just laid out like this. So you have the smaller ingredients in the front, then you have the larger ingredients in the back, and something like flour, you could probably change this and have a jar of flour, a nice wide brimmed jar that says flour. You have sugar in the front, in this foreground, and what else do we have? Baking soda in the back. So you make this, and then you could probably also make a nice tablecloth design. And make it look rather quaint. Because here they're just floating in space, here they're all settled. So we have changed small to big. Instead of in a circle, we have put them all like a family photograph in the back, and the cake is in the foreground. And we have not shown the oven and the timer, which is also fine because we can use this text in the middle, or you can also do something like this. You can make a design over here in which you can write this text. It doesn't always have to be in a text block, very boring. So you can write banana walnut cake like that. And show this little thing, mix all the ingredients and bake to whatever. And you can put all sorts of designs on the plate, whatnot. So it becomes really heavy picture. So here it was quite light, lots of white space, and here very little white space. Now the third one. One second. So the third illustration can be maybe more fun. You can have maybe you can have the illustrations floating about with text. So you could probably make the cake pretty big here, with walnuts on top, and all the other ingredients could be floating in the air. So you have eggs floating like that, and here you can use text as the body text as part of your illustration. So this also becomes a factor. You could show the pot of sugar like that, and maybe 2 teaspoons floating out. So this becomes a little more fantasy. You could show all the walnuts floating around. And somewhere you could write the quantities, or you could just, like, you could write the walnuts 50 grams somewhere, or show them in a cup, just falling from that. And then for the flour, you could show um, maybe a different kind of spoon. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and butter. You could just have chunks of butter floating out. And some of the illustration could, or the text could be in blocks like that, where you can write cake pretty big and write the banana walnut part somewhere like this. And maybe juxtapose it such that the banana and the walnut come in this circle instead of the flower. Put the flower over here so that it looks what it is saying, and that is also part of the ingredients. Okay, so which composition would you like to choose? Let's vote. 1, 2, or 3. Any preferences?
I like the tablecloth one.
Okay, tablecloth. Okay, 2 for tablecloth.
I
Anyone?
like 2 and 3.
Okay, so again, one more vote for tablecloth. All right, let's go with tablecloth. Everyone okay with that? Okay, great. Now we're going to need a little bit of measurement here. So if you have a scale, it'll really help. And I just want to show this to you. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. I want to show you a few things that you need to know when you are submitting the illustration. So I have given you a measurement of 8 inches by 9.5. So when you make an illustration like this, like what we're going to make today, the tablecloth part is going to run uh, out of the page, right? So if we want to show this, this is called a design that bleeds out. So if you want to show a bleed, you should have some extra space around where you expand the design outside of what's meant to be the border, so that when the editor clicks a picture or clips a picture, they have a little extra space to maneuver in case they need to center the picture or change it according to whatever reason, technicality. So our page, A4 size page, is about 8.5 or 8.25 inch in width. So I'm going to crunch this down to 7 inches, and I'm going to leave some space from the left as well as the right, about 3/4 of an inch from the left, 3/4 from the right. That's going to give me 3/4 inch space for my design to bleed out. You can make it even smaller if that works for you. And as far as the height is concerned, then if it's like a simple cross math, if my width is going to be 7 inches, where it should be 8, then my height needs to be about 8.5, 8.3 inches instead of 9.5. Don't do the math. I've already done it several times. So we need to make a rectangle that is 7 inches by 8.3 inches. That'll give us room. Now, if you do want to make a picture larger, you do the same cross multiplication, and instead of 8 inches width, say you want to illustrate on a 10-inch width picture, then your height will also be that much more. And if you are going to make something very intricate and you need more space, it is always advisable to illustrate on something larger, which will be then reduced in size by about 20 or 25% to get us a very sharp line. That is what we normally do in illustration. So let's measure 3/4 inch from the left up to 7 inches. So since I'm counting from 1 inch here, I'll go up to the 8-inch mark on the right. And always make your lines across 2 points, not just one, because this is another thing that happens when I get these illustrations to edit. The edges are not straight, they are slightly skewed, and then the whole illustration looks sad. So spend a good 5 or 10 minutes making these lines first. I'm telling you, it is so worth it. As much as you are itching to start, these measurements make a big difference finally, and you don't have to regret it. Measure twice, cut once. Then you can mark maybe an inch from the bottom, or again 3/4 inch from the bottom. And go up to about 8.3. You can also go to 8.5, that's fine. 2 mm will not make much of a difference, and that's where that whole bleed makes sense. So I'm marking my point at about 8 and 1 point beyond the quarter mark. And always make sure that you're getting right angle corners. I've drawn this fairly light so you won't see it, but this is my dimension. Okay, now we just have to start drawing. So start with making everything as transparencies. The cake illustration that Siley has shared is pretty. So you can make that like this. I'll just bring this a little closer. I'm not going to make it too dark. But start with the base somewhere here. And then give your cake some thickness and roundness on top. So these walls are always parallel. This is on the other side, so it will be the opposite. And the lines are going to be very wobbly because after all this is cake, so it does not have very straight walls. And there's going to be a whole lot of walnut dust and crumb on top. So here's our cake. Don't worry about making it too detailed at this stage. Now somewhere around the top of the walnut is where, not walnut, the cake, is where we draw a line, and from there to somewhere on the top to mark the area in which we want to, a band where we want to draw the ingredients. Any higher than that, we won't have space for our title. And then basically you just start making the illustrations. So you can make the eggs here. This is not the end of the table though. Oh. Show, okay, so now here's another thing. If you have to show anything tilted, show them tilted in a radial manner. So the center, you can keep them straight, and everything else is curving outward like this. That generally looks better. So I've got my egg pointing in this direction, but I think it would be better if the egg is pointing outward. And the egg next to that is a little more upright if it is on the inside, and if it's on the outside, it will be even horizontal. So this is just basic rules of graphic design where you don't want two things pointing in the same direction. Change them, and if you are going to change the directions, make them pointing in a radial manner away from your center topic. Okay, we're writing banana walnut on top. What's next? Okay, let's draw the butter in the back here. And it can bleed outside. And if you think that the chunk of butter is taking up too much attention, make it a small chunk. You can omit the knife, the butter knife. Bananas. Now, if you're going to draw the bananas like this, draw them in this direction. And you can draw one banana here. You can draw, maybe bring one egg down here instead. And then draw a couple of bananas like this. They don't have to be joined. Sugar, baking soda, anything that is symmetrical, draw it somewhere in the back where only half of it has to be drawn. And then flour. You can also draw like this really large steel containers if you have those of flour. And maybe you can draw a little spoon sticking out. So this looks like an active scene. Okay, everyone is happy with the illustrations? Let's count the ingredients. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. walnuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the walnuts we can draw over here because there's so much of blank space, they can look big. Maybe also draw one more over here. So we have about so much space for the tablecloth, and the rest is just going to be the wall. Now for that running hand that I have been doing a lot of, this is how you can do a running hand. We can write banana walnut in one line and write cake over here maybe. Yes, so let's do banana and walnut here. And in order to write those cursive letters, you need to have two lines. One is going to be the base line and one is going to be the line of the size of the letters. And all you do is start with writing in print with the letters a certain distance apart. Manage the distance between the words. Not the words, sorry, letters. Your script will look good if that spacing is uniform. And when you write it, just see that there is enough space from the left as well as right. Don't make the letters too big. And once you have written that, you can make a few adjustments like that. Convert the B to a cursive B like this. And join the bottom part of the letter to the top of the next. And that should do it for now. Now if you want to make it even more fancy, all the strokes that are coming downward, you thicken them. When I make this in pen, I'll be able to show you better. Banana walnut, and the cake word can be slightly bigger. Now this is how I do it. Sorry for writing the C first. Make a line to mark the center. We should have done this before writing banana walnut also. And then on either side of that line make two boxes so that the word cake is going to fit in. When you make these boxes, check for size. Check that you have the same size, same amount of space from the left and from the right. And then you can start writing cake, C-A-K-E, in the middle of those boxes. Okay, now I'm going to ink this. This will give you a chance to redraw everything again. And you'll also see it better because this is This must be really painful to see. And I'm going to illustrate this in my brush pen. Now, this is archival ink, waterproof ink. So do use something like this or use a micron pen. Do not use just any regular pen or any regular ink because we are going to do some watercolor on this and you don't want that ink to run. Now don't make the borders because we want our design to bleed. The borders are just an indication of the edges of our illustration. And I'm making a really wobbly line for all my illustration. My entire illustration is going to be with a certain wobbly line. So the wobbly line is one where I'm not really controlling the brush too much or the pen too much. I'm not putting too much pressure. And literally I'm making this looking at the reference image that Siley has sent. So there are a few shapes that you can see that are dotting the top of the cake. And that texture is really important. And anything that we draw within the cake, the body of the cake, don't draw that with any firm lines. So here the texture changes. You'll see that there is more happening on the top of the cake than on the side. Maybe you can draw a few lines like that, just a few dots. Walnut, also the same. Make wobbly ovals first. Eventually this will look like a walnut. Oh God, my egg does not even look like a proper egg. God knows what beast's egg this is. So when I'm making the illustration, I'm just checking that I have enough space to write all these things. We have to write baking soda, sugar, flour, things like that. And all the ingredients will have their own texture. So butter will need to look a little soft. Whereas containers like these will have to look slightly more solid. So your line could be, though it's wobbly, it needs to look a little firm. And once I have this, somewhere in the background, I will make my tablecloth. So I'll just make a line through and through, checking that it's straight, or it can also be at an angle, whatever you're comfortable with. Maybe make that line. So anything that is too close to the edge, I am making it a little bigger than the edge. Don't stop right at the line that we've drawn as the edge of the picture. I'm going to draw one extra line on the bananas as the segment of the peel. Okay, how's everyone doing? I'm not making any labels as yet. Because I want to paint on these first and then maybe make the label on it. Okay, shall we start painting? Right, now we have very few ingredients to paint. It's mostly the cake, and everything else is pretty much just maybe a cream colored jar. This could be a white jar, white, slightly creamish. This is yellowish. So all these are very light colors. We can finish painting them in the beginning. So start off with painting the banana with mix of lemon yellow and gamboge. And this time we can do the same thing like the dragging of the color. Drop the color at the stalk and then using a little bit of water drag this color out so that it does not look one flat color. And then you can take a little bit of green and put it on the stalk, or in fact you can take a little bit of burnt umber and drop it in a few random spaces to resemble the spots of ripe bananas. Now I'm using a big brush, but I'm being very careful that I don't have too much paint in the brush. And I can always come back into these very spots and make them slightly darker as my color dries. Same color for the butter. And we can do the same treatment also. One side can be rather deep and the other can just be the same color dragged down. Somehow keeping colors flat doesn't really work for watercolor, I think. Then we can make a gray shade using black, burnt umber, and ultramarine or cobalt blue. And you can use this shade to make shadows like this on some parts of the containers. Otherwise, they have nothing, poor fellows. And also the same on the bottom of the egg. So I'm turning my book around. I want you to see this brush manipulation only along the bottom of the eggs, so that they look like they are three-dimensional. Inside of the spoon also can be a shadow. And now we can make a mix of, I guess, yellow ochre and burnt sienna, maybe. Oh, sorry, not here. The walnuts. Now, painting walnuts, remember they are nuts, and sometimes the nut can be a little shiny. So, paint in small bursts of color, leaving just a little shine very randomly wherever you can. Usually to the top would be better. Now, when painting the cake, oh, one second, let me just give you a minute. Yeah, sorry. All right. Now, when we are painting the cake, you can you should think of this again in terms of layers, not what you are painting, but what colors you see where you see shadows, where you see highlights, and what shades you see over there. So I am now creating these more textures for the walnuts because I want to really fill the top up. I also want to show some randomness. So in some places I'll show the walnuts really filled up, some places not as much. What you don't want to do is draw the same kind of cloud shape. Then when we are coloring, start with a lightish color. And I think the color that we want for our cake is going to be a little dullish. So you want yellow ochre, a little bit of light red, and maybe a little bit of raw umber as well. Very little bit. And then what you do is you start putting this color all over. Except when you come to the walnut part, dodge around that to some extent. We are going to make it darker on top. So we'll paint around this as well. But the light color of the cake is going to be used as a primer. And you'll notice that there are some spots in the cake also where it has been cut, which have a lighter section just because of how the light is hitting there. And now when you come to the side, you can add more light red and start blending some colors. So you'll use a little bit of light red and burnt umber as you go into the side. Remember to just stain the paper. Put your brush down flat, stain the paper, and then move forward. And in some places, right at the edge of the crust, you can add the same deep color so that that travels into the cake a little bit. All this is going to dry up and become really light. Now comes our second layer for the top. And I'm making my second layer now because the color is slightly damp, slightly dry. Some places I have more light red happening, in some places I have more burnt umber. And I'm not too worried about it becoming patchy. I'm just taking my time going around all these sections, painting whatever color I have in my brush at that time. So if I happen to have a light red over there, the cake will look a little less brown. In other places, it might look a little more brown. That is generally the nature of baking. So this is a little tricky, and the brush I have has got an excellent tip. So I can hold it just by the tip and make these marks. But don't feel shy to pull out your extra fine brush to make some of the painting in the nooks and crannies of your cake. Now, as we come to the edge here, I can see that there is a rather dark edge to the cake. So you can make that mixing burnt umber, crimson, black, also ultramarine blue, and make a nice deep edge which you can pull down even more. This is an option, it's not necessary. And this same color you can also drop in some places on top, very close to the walnuts, so you get some depth. I'm repeating the same color from the top at the bottom, but I'm leaving a little gap after that dark color because I don't want all of that dark color coming down. And then finally you can join the two. Now you can make a few marks in the cake in a few places using that same color. Don't make it over the entire cake because that'll look so fake. It'll take away from the joy of the painting. Okay, how's everyone doing? All right, now for the tablecloth. The tablecloth is going to take a little while, so just so you know, it's 5 minutes to 8. So if anyone needs to exit the classroom, you may. I'll continue to do this and record it so that you can always refer to it later on as well. So I want to make a checker pattern on the tablecloth, like you might have at a cafe. And you can make it straight also, but I like to go at an angle which is not exactly 45 degrees and not exactly 90 degrees either. So I'll make these lines parallel to each other. They are equidistant from each other. So wherever I'm drawing a line, I'll just check that the next line is equal. And you can do it just like this. Keep two fingers and draw this line. Avoid using a scale for this because the scale makes your lines so perfect that everything else starts looking imperfect. And then in true spirit also you will make, I've landed up making it exactly 45 degrees. Forget it. Right, so now you make a line that goes perpendicular to the lines that you have made, if you can, same distance apart. No, it's not 45 degrees. piece. Great. So the line over here on this side should look like it's a continuation of the line on the right. And basically all you need to do now is make a bunch of stripes. So you decide on how long, how wide your stripe needs to be. And in each of the places where you made the pencil mark, you just make a line that's that wide. And extend it beyond the edge as we have extended other stuff. So you can draw perfectly parallel lines and then paint within that if you feel underconfident. And also, don't worry about these lines looking patchy. It's fine, let it be. Once these dry, you can come back to this and make the cross lines as well. So while this is drying, we can, I don't know if you can make it, but I'll show you how to paint the top. If you have drawn the letters and if you're comfortable with where they are going to be, you can just turn your book upside down and make the letters. But if you are not sure, then you can wait till the bottom dries, then you can make the rest. So I'm just going to try this out. I've never done this before. So very often illustrators or artists who, like when we work on sites where you are, say, painting a signboard or something really large, you cannot climb on top of the signboard, so you learn to paint things upside down. And actually it's a great exercise. Looks like this is dried. So now I'll paint in the opposite direction. Now this is looking a little odd, so I am adding stripes in between also. And since we had kept the original stripes equidistant, this is not going to be too tough. It looks like a nice little picnic thing happening. Now, notice one thing, we have maintained a very small palette. We've not gone and made all sorts of colors in blue, green, yellow, purple, everything. And that's, I guess, a design choice. But I prefer to maintain a certain harmony in colors. This whole idea that using lots of colors is going to make something look um, better is not really true. Too many colors can take away the attention from your subject. So, if you want your subject to really shine, it goes back to who's the hero here. If you want the color to be a hero, that is possible. Then make the tablecloth using green and purple and flowers and all sorts of stuff. But that is not really adding to the picture as much as taking away and distracting from the cake itself. So if I want to enhance this further, I can always put shadows. And I could have done this even before the making the tablecloth. I'm just going to add some shadows now using just ultramarine blue. There is a little bit of black in that, but it's almost negligible. So I can add a shadow underneath the cake. It's a very subtle shadow. It won't really stand out, but it'll make the cake stand out pretty well. I can also put it underneath these, the walnuts. And the shadows will make the tablecloth look like a separate entity. I can't put it underneath the egg right now, but it'll be there. Now, when it comes to banana walnut, again, don't be tempted to write the word banana in yellow, walnut in its color. Too many things. Don't do that. So stick to something neutral. You can just use a gray or just a regular black also, because we have a black outline. You can tie in the two blacks by using one gray element, and with a thin brush you can just go over this. Hopefully I will not erase anything. So those of you who are familiar with brush lettering can just use basic brush lettering for this. If not, just go ahead and make it exactly like how we wrote the letters first and make an outline to that. And just paint through. This text, the word banana walnut, is subordinate. It is supporting the cake, and the entire text is supporting the illustration, in which the ingredients are all supporting the cake, right? So it should look like that. You should not have elements that are fighting with each other for attention. That makes for a very bad group of elements. We can do a little more maybe, because of this blue here. You can use another blue to give some shadow. I think I'm just a little partial to all shadows. So I'll always give a shadow and cerulean when it's not even necessary. I just feel it makes the letters stand out a little more, very subtle. And the rule is very simple. You can make a shadow a certain distance away from the letter in the same direction. It's barely visible, but it's cute. I like it. Now, the thing that's remaining is the instructions and also these letters here. Can I just quickly do that for you? Just give me 5 minutes. So the word baking soda is not fully visible, but it cannot be anything else. It is not going to be baking sodium or whatever. It is not, I mean, baking salt is not a baking salt. So, in order to write the whole soda, don't manipulate your lettering here because that will make that baking soda jar look really horrible. In order to just keep the simplicity of the picture, I'm maintaining the same kind of lettering throughout, not too different, just making the letters a little far apart and maybe a little rounded so that they can go with the roundness of the object here. And then flower also the same. I'm writing them on a curved baseline, that's about it. But I'm not writing them so dark that this can be seen from the moon. And as far as the instructions go, we had that little cloud here, but there is very little space. So I don't want to mess with that. Let me just erase all these things and see how much space we have here, and then take a call. Okay, this looks good. So what I can do now, could have done also, is write a small instruction at the base here. Mix all ingredients and bake at 180 degrees for 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. 1 minute. Quantities. So I'm writing the quantities right here. 2 teaspoons sugar, 100 grams, sorry. Now we're going to write 100 grams. 2 teaspoons was baking soda, 1 teaspoon. Okay, 1 teaspoon. And this will be 100 grams. And then the flour was 200 grams. And the butter was 100 grams. So that can be written very discreetly over here. And I'm just going to leave that person to decide how many walnuts they want to put over here. Surely they can't put an unreasonable amount of walnuts. Alright, and then we are baking it. Hold on. Blend together, bake in Okay, preheat oven to 180 degrees. Bake for 45 minutes. Okay, let's try this. Bake. We have space to write 45 to 50. So I'll write that. Now, if I did not have enough space here, I would have just truncated the word and written MINS. But there is space here, so I want to keep the center aligned. And that's done. Phew. Just 50
Ah,
over. Looking good, isn't it? Yay.